Today on More Muchier, I get to speak with Randy Nundlall, the co-writer and director of Infrared, releasing July 22nd.
I have to be really honest with you about the movie. So Infrared is a found footage thriller flick that focuses on paranormal investigator and his production crew who gain access to this like mysterious abandoned school where supposed bad stuff happened. And so they're trying to uncover this like terrifying like truth and see what really happened when things aren't as they seem.
Yes.
And it's starring Jesse Jansen, Leah Finity, and Greg Sestero. And I have never heard of those guys before. So it was a delight to be introduced to them and to see their range because they were absolutely brilliant.
Oh, good.
But with found footage, it's really hit or miss.
I agree. Yeah.
And me personally, I don't prefer them. But with this film, it was really quite funny. It was like Paranormal Activity and Blair Witch Project and Ghost Adventures like got together and had a baby. But it was also better than that because I found myself really invested in the film. Like when it started off, you start off and you're like, oh, it's found footage. Okay. And then you kind of roll your eyes. But like as I was watching it, I was like, and I kept getting like drawn into this. And it was like, so with the big difference of this film than other found footage films is like, you guys had deep layers and character stories that were just phenomenal. So was that like something that you and Robert like came up with and were like, okay, we've got to do it this way so that way other people will not just dismiss it? Or
so with found footage being hit and miss, I do agree, because actually, to be honest, like many years ago, I didn't really like found footage films, but I hadn't seen many. But then Rob got me into more, and I started watching lots, especially to research this film. And I was like, hey, there are a lot of good found footage films. As you said, there are ones not so good. I won't name any. But yeah, so we wanted to do a genre piece, and we thought horror would be fun. I've always wanted to do a horror. So has he. And we're also very interested in characters, relationships. So we've worked with Jesse and Leah before on another feature film, which hasn't been released, called The Other Girl, which was a comedy. And in that film, we explored the relationship of the characters, and a lot of people found that interesting. So we wanted to do something similar in this film, because they're actually a couple in real life. And it's funny that they're playing brother and sister in this one. Because when we work with Jesse and Leah, we always like to make them argue a lot in the film. But with this one, we're like, okay, let's make them brother and sister. They've had a falling out, and then they come together. And we had an outline for the whole film. The dialogue wasn't scripted, so we had beats we wanted to hit. But we really wanted to explore the characters in particular, because it's in horror you don't really see that much because people tend to go for the jump scares more and the tension, which we do have that, and I think there's a lot of tension that builds up, especially towards the end. The last 10-15 minutes is when it really blows up. But a lot of people seem to like the character aspect in particular, and we take that as a compliment.
Well,
they have such a great dynamic as well, and we wanted to take advantage of it.
Yeah, like that's one of the things that I was sitting there noticing, and it's even more surprising when you say that dialogue wasn't scripted. They were just going and doing, and that's incredible considering like Jesse. At first, it was off-putting, but then once I kind of realized exactly what was going on, like how he was supposed to be this over-the-top, like Ghost Adventures, like host, and he was like, we're going into this house and da-da-da, but then it was just like, okay, please, all of that is good in this world, let it not be like that throughout the whole movie. And it was just amazing, his range and the way that him and Leia like fed off of each other. Like their chemistry is just undeniably like incredible. So that was enjoyable, and it is incredibly shocking that that was like not dialogued at all. They were just going.
No one in the film had the only people who knew what was happening, what was like the overall story, was myself, Rob, and we gave Greg the whole outline. Jesse and Leah didn't know what was going to happen, so we gave them a background of the character, what happened in the past, and then each scene we tell them, okay, at the end of this scene, we want you to hit this goal. So what we like to do, so I'm trying to think of a scene. Okay, so for example, the school tour where Leah turns up, we tell Jesse, okay, this is your show, you're in charge, like you want to be in the spotlight, and then obviously you don't like Leah's character, Izzy, and then we'll tell Leah, okay, every now and again, just comment on something you've seen, and then Rob will point the camera towards you. So then there's that conflict, which is created. There are other scenes as well, like the exorcism scene. We had a similar thing, but that scene originally was in the rough cut 30 minutes, and we got it down to a 3-minute segment. But in that scene, we had a lot of things like that, where he wanted to look like very competent, and we tell the couple in the episode, like, mention this thing to make him look stupid. So there was a lot of conflict being created, and Jesse does a really good job, and Leah and everyone, they do a great job of reacting to those kind of things.
Yeah, that is almost in the same form of like Alfred Hitchcock, you know, how he would do with his actresses and actors. He wouldn't tell them there's a room full of birds, you know, coming at you. And then that would be their real reaction, that real terror. And that's like, I think that just makes it more realistic, more human, and more relatable whenever, and I love when directors do that. Like they sit there and they add those bits, you know, like, I mean, Julia Roberts and Richard Gere in Pretty Woman, when he sits there and does that, you know, that's a real laugh from her, because that wasn't supposed to happen, you know? So like, those are the most profound and beautiful moments in cinema that I think I've ever, you know, Casablanca, Here's Looking at You, Kid, you know, like, I mean, all of these are just amazing. So the fact that you did the whole movie that way, that's why it was so incredibly it drew me in so well, was just because of the dynamic, the chemistry, and because you guys, I guess, have all worked together before, y'all's family like feel translated into that film. So like the crew and everything, I don't want to bore you again, the crew and everything, just, do you think that helped like y'all's comfortability to, you know, lend to the movie?
So because Jesse and Leah are in a couple in real life, and they work together a lot, and I've worked with them a lot of times, and so has Rob, so that really helps. Actually, the last film we did was the first time me and Rob have co-directed, so there was like kind of awkward at first, but then once we realized, hey, we're pretty much on the same page, we didn't feel like we were stepping on each other's toes, and then Jesse and Leah got used to working with us in that kind of style. Because what we do, we make the backstory, the outline, and we just plant that seed with the actors. They do a lot of the work. They deserve a lot of credit. That's what everyone in the film.
That's awesome. And that's like, I'm a writer, so I mean, you'll know this, but you know, you've got plotting, you've got pantsing, and then you got plantsing, and it's like, or plotsing, and it's like, you guys just plots the whole movie. Like, you've got your main point, A, B, C. This is the main points. How we get there is by the seat of our pants. We'll figure it out. And I think it's like one of the, like, that's how I write, is by doing that. I'm a very intuitive writer, so it kind of just naturally all flows that way. I don't know how. It's a miracle, I think, a lot of the time. But, you know, I think that it's great that it shows kind of like this evolution of, you know, your point A to your point B, and then that beautiful like evolution, especially for like a horror flick, is amazing, because you don't know what's going to happen. Even the cast members don't know what's going to happen. So it's great. So whose story idea was this?
Rob came up with the initial idea of, hey, let's do a found footage a horror film where it's about a paranormal investigator and we should get Jesse and Leah to be brother and sister and they've had a falling out. He tends to come up with like the overall structure and I go in and fill the details. So we're like, hey, so for example, I think so there's a scene where Ariel, the girl Jane, goes explores the buildings, and I put little details like, hey, I've actually put in these cameras around. So I fill in the little details like that. I go through and say, okay, logically this doesn't make sense. This character would be seen in like this, etc., etc. So it's a big group effort.
That's really cool because it seems like you and Robert have like y'all's individual strengths that when put together is just phenomenal. Because like I guess Robert and I are a little like in that way, is like I don't see the itty bitty details. I see the bigger things, and like the itty bitty details just I'm like, oh, I printed off this flyer for this person and their last name is all in lowercase, you know, like I don't notice these things. It's horrible. It's but that's really cool. And I like how with those small cameras, and you were talking about detail. So then I'm going to go ahead and attribute this to probably you. This is going to be my guess. But you know, the part where Wes is like announcing that they're going to be doing you know, paranormal, you know, investigation at Lincoln School. I noticed there was a Lincoln book on the shelf up there, and it was really creepy. Do you not know what I'm talking about?
No.
Yeah, there's
in the school.
No, in the house, in his office, like so, above the computer, there's a book, and it's like Lincoln, and then he announces Lincoln High School or school.
I'm going to watch it back. I think I know what happened. So that was Austin's place at the time. He was the sound guy in the film, and he did some of the production design. It wouldn't surprise me if he went up there and put it on purpose, because he likes little details like that as well.
Really? Yeah. Well, he did good. I noticed it. And I was like, wow, that's really clever right there with the Lincoln book, the foreshadowing, and then he's like Lincoln School. And I'm like, whoa, that's like...
You must have been watching on a big screen. I've like watched the film, because I edited it. I must have seen it like 100 times.
Right. Well...
We'll give us credit, even if you didn't do it on purpose.
It'll be okay. Otherwise, it's just a happy circumstance that just randomly happened in a paranormal flick.
Yeah.
Nothing scary there. Okay, so the lighting and camera angles chosen really brought depth to the emotions of the movie. So how did you guys work to create like that enhancement to it? Like, because you would sit there and he would just like, there'd be some really fantastic angles where you're just sitting there like kind of creeped out because you don't know what's going to be happening next, but you're kind of not. But one of the key moments that I really liked was when Wes and Izzy are, you know, on the basketball court or whatever, that area, and then the camera is shining through the window down to kind of like an office feel, but not. So who is in charge of all of that?
That's Rob did the camera, so a lot of that is him. He did such a good job, because I agree with found footage. A lot of it is like, oh, I'm gonna run around shaky camera and you can't see anything. And
yeah,
I think the way he did the camera made it accessible to a lot of people, because we did a screening in Sacramento, and a lot of people who attended, like friends, family. I don't think they like found footage that much, or maybe they haven't seen that many, but a lot of people really liked it, and I genuinely think the camera stuff helped. But something like that scene, we would outline like Wes and Izzy are talking outside. Rob is spying through the window, so things like that.
Okay.
But a lot of it, honestly, was in the moment. Rob's very good at like capturing moments.
Yeah, and like that's something that I did notice with the camera work. It wasn't like Blair Witch Project where you feel like you've just done the tilt-a-whirl at the fair after eating like all of this food. Yeah. So it was very beautifully done in that there was stability, but there was just enough instability to kind of, you know, put that edge on that. So that's exciting. I like knowing what all went into this. Now I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch it so that way I can appreciate even like I thought the Lincoln book was really good detail, but now I'm like I need to go look again further in and look at all of this stuff.
Yeah, I need to look for that as well.
I feel so bad now.
No, you're making us look better than we are. That's good.
I know. We'll edit it out. It'll be okay. We won't know about it.
You can keep it up.
Am I the only person that caught that like you've talked?
I feel like someone has in it, and I it might have been Austin. That sounds familiar, but I don't know if I'm making stuff up because I know he likes to. I remember he came up to me at several points and was like, "Did you notice that I put that in the background?" No. I don't know. So he likes little details like that.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't surprised because I remember that office. He did put some stuff like he was like, "I put this stuff on the computer because it makes him look like this kind of character. I put this little thing in the corner," so that wouldn't surprise me.
I'm gonna watch it now just to look for Austin's little touches and just be like, that was Austin right there because it's so minuscule, but it's noticeable. It's amazing. So he did really good with the aesthetic of the set, adding in all of those things. Just so you know. So Jesse, Leia, and Greg all have phenomenal ranges, but Leia really shined in her role as Izzy. So did each of them come up with their own ideas as to their characters' mannerisms and behaviors, or was there like they would bring something up to you and then you might be like, well, let's try it this way? Or
so with the characters we give them, we like, because we know Jesse and Leia going to depth about the characters and we trust them a lot to take the characters in certain directions. So we give them just a brief overview of the characters. So we knew Wes was going to be eccentric and Leia was going to be the more grounded one. Actually, to be honest, in the original outline, so with improv, you have to outline, but things can change as you go along. With the original outline, we wanted Wes to be like a dick throughout the whole thing and supposed to be kind of unlikable, but I think Jesse took that like in the beginning, and then eventually he makes the character more sympathetic. I like that you said that about Leia because I feel like they work together quite often and Jesse's always the one that gets the attention because he's such a big presence, but Leia I think really holds the film together. Every time we work with her, like the other girl, the film we did before, she was my favorite because she really keeps the scenes moving and really helps with the setups and stuff like that. So she deserves a lot of credit.
Yeah. Well, and with Jesse, like I have to say, he did really well because I started off hating him and I was like, this guy is just vapid, shallow, like one-dimensional, like gross. And then you bring Leia in and then you're like, oh, wait a second, like that's the start to where you're like, okay, well, maybe there is more to this guy than, what meets the eye. And then you seeing their relationship and the damage and the reconnection, and then towards the end you're just like you love them both, it's like, okay, that was just a show, that was a facade, and I love that. So it was well done with character development for both of them to be able to portray that so well and to keep me watching, because like I said, found footage start off with a jerk. I'm just sitting here like, what is this? Right. And then it just ended up being like one of the most phenomenal movies I think I've ever watched, just because of that. Like, I was raised in horror. Like my dad introduced me to Exorcist at like 4 years old. And so I know it was brutal and it was fun, but horror doesn't really faze me anymore. Like I don't get any enjoyment out of it anymore, I guess. And so because I was raised that way, like your movie is one of the first ones I've actually enjoyed in years, just because it was fresh. It was new. It wasn't redone old tropes. There was nice little twists on those things. So I really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you. That's quite a compliment. I wasn't prepared for that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That was a lot. That's enough. I'm sorry. Wow, thank you.
You're welcome. So, who are some creatives that have inspired you as a writer slash director?
In general, phew, I really like. I mean, Quentin Tarantino. I like a lot.
Oh, he's amazing.
He's great because he does so many different types of genres, but when you watch one of his films, you can tell that he's done it. It's such a unique touch. I love him. Christopher Nolan. I like David Lynch. There are a lot of foreign directors I like as well. I like watching lots of different types of films, different directors, and when I make a film, I like to just combine all these different inspirations to try and make something new.
That's really cool. That's really cool. And like Tarantino, I could kind of see some like Tarantino in that, which is really I love Tarantino. He's like one of my favorites, you know, like just from all of the things like, you know, Pulp Fiction and all of that, you know, so like I really enjoy his movies. And so there were some aspects to it, to yours and what you were doing with like some of the angles and some of the ways that you guys handled things. It was really, really incredible and it was enjoyable to watch. So, question, are there any organizations or anything that you're involved in?
We work for Futures Explored. Myself and Rob, there's actually a sign in the background, which is a non-profit that works with adults with developmental disabilities, and we teach them filmmaking, trying to get them work and stuff, which is super inspiring. We love working with a lot of our students. So actually, we had two students really cool. work on infrared for some of the bigger shoot days.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so cool. That's incredible. Like, yeah, that's amazing.
And they had fun as well. I remember there was one night where it was aerial scene, and he came and like he was slamming all the locker doors, and he did great. Like he slammed them, and then he'd hide, and he had lots of fun. So
that's incredible. Like he did really good, because some of those did jump scare me, and I'm really not a jump scary person. Like it's hard to get me to jump, but I one of those scenes like made me jump like out of my pants almost, because I was like, I didn't expect it to happen. And I'm sitting here like, oh, okay, so that's a first in a very long time. I had to pause the show. So I was sitting there like kind of getting my wits about me, because I was watching this at night, you know. Pup was
perfect.
Yeah, I was like alone in the house, and like all of the kids were asleep, and it was just like, okay. And then that happened, and I was like, was that a dog? Was that the movie? What is going on? And I had to sit there and get my wits about me. Is there anything that's coming up that we should be keeping our eyes out for?
Yes, myself and Rob are doing a Christmas horror anthology, which we're aiming to have released by the end of the year. I can't say, Rob always says, I can't say too much about it, so I will echo his words. Can't say too much about it, but Greg Sestero is in it again. We have Vernon Wells, Dave Sheridan, and possibly Phyllis Rose involved, who have followings.
Okay.
So that should be fun. So we've filmed, I think, four out of the 5. We have one more short left, and we're trying to get it done by September so we can release it in December. It's been quite a ride.
Oh man, that sounds like you guys are like, you know, speed running this thing. Where can people find you and connect with you and learn more about your work?
So they can follow me on Instagram. My handle, it feels weird like promoting Instagram. My Instagram is Randaego, so that's RANDAEGO.
Well, thank you so much for talking with me, Randy. I appreciate you and for sharing all of the lovely tidbits. And I'll be sure to, if I ever talk to Robert, to let him know that you did fine.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
You talked. I talked too much and made a fool out of myself. It's great. That's what I do.
You did great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.